When we think about the history of slavery, the image is often one of passive victims, but that's not the full story. Not even close. The story of slavery isn't just one of oppression, it's a story of survival, of defiance, and of a relentless fight for freedom. From the moment of capture on the shores of Africa to the last breath on plantations in the Americas, people fought back. At every single stage, in ways loud and quiet, seen and unseen, there was resistance. These are the untold stories of the forgotten heroes who rose up against the slave trade, a constant, brutal struggle proving that the human spirit can never truly be crushed. Resistance at the source. The fight for freedom didn't start in the Americas. It began in Africa. Long before the first ships crossed the Atlantic, communities faced the terror of slave raiders, but they didn't just submit. Across the continent, villages and towns organized their own defense. They built clever fortifications, walls, and trenches, turning their homes into fortresses. They set up complex warning systems, using lookouts and signals to alert everyone about approaching danger, giving people time to flee or prepare for a fight. Many Africans fought back fiercely against their would-be captors, choosing death over bondage. Others escaped into remote hills and forests, forming the very first Maroon communities, free settlements on African soil. This was the first front in the war against slavery, a battle that was born the very moment freedom was threatened. Rebellion on the high seas. For the millions who were captured, the journey across the Atlantic, the Middle Passage, was a vision of hell. But even in the suffocating darkness of a slave ship's hold, the fire of rebellion was never put out. The ships were floating prisons designed to crush the human will, but they became battlegrounds instead. Uprisings at sea were a constant threat to European traders, with historians estimating that as many as 1 in every 10 slaving voyages had a major revolt. These were desperate, violent struggles for control. Take the revolt on the Dutch ship Guineas Vriendschap in 1769. Led by a man named Yeri Etten, the captive Africans nearly seized the entire vessel before the revolt was brutally put down. Then there was the successful mutiny on the Clare in 1729, where the captives overpowered the crew, drove them off the ship, and sailed themselves to freedom. In 1742, on the Sierra Leone River, Africans attacked the Jolly Bachelor before it could even set sail, killing the captain, stripping the ship, and freeing everyone trapped in the hold. Other forms of resistance were tragically common. Hunger strikes were so frequent that captors used horrific force-feeding just to preserve the value of their human cargo. And many chose the ultimate act of defiance, leaping overboard, choosing death in the ocean over a life in chains. Every one of these acts, successful or not, was a declaration that they were human beings, not cargo, and they would fight for their freedom until the very end. Freedom in the wilds. The Maroon communities. For those who survived the Middle Passage and were forced into slavery in the Americas, escape was a constant dream. For tens of thousands, that dream became a reality. They fled plantations, disappearing into mountains, swamps, and forests that colonial powers thought were uninhabitable. There, they built new lives and new societies, becoming known as Maroons. These weren't just hiding spots, they were independent settlements, strongholds of freedom with their own governments, cultures, and defenses. One of the most incredible examples was the Great Dismal Swamp, a massive, treacherous marsh on the Virginia-North Carolina border. Between the 1700s and the 1860s, thousands of self-emancipated people made this swamp their home. They built communities on high, dry islands scattered through the marsh, hidden from the world. Life was tough, full of venomous snakes, dense thickets, and the constant fear of being found. But the same harsh conditions that made life a struggle also made the swamp a sanctuary, protecting them from slave catchers. This community, made up of people who had escaped, their children born into freedom, and even some Native Americans and outcast whites, thrived for generations. They built cabins, foraged, hunted, and even traded with the outside world, creating a powerful, resilient society right under the nose of the slaveholding states. The Maroons of the Great Dismal Swamp represent one of the most powerful, untold stories of resistance, a living, breathing monument to self-liberation. These stories of incredible bravery have been ignored for far too long. If you believe this history needs to be shared, take a second to subscribe to our channel and like this video. It's the best way to help us keep bringing these forgotten narratives out of the shadows. And if you want to support our work directly, think about joining our community on Patreon. The earliest sparks. The 1521 Hispaniola Revolt resistance in the Americas is as old as slavery in the Americas. In fact, the first recorded major slave rebellion in the hemisphere happened around Christmas of 1521 on the island of Hispaniola. The uprising started on a sugar plantation owned by none other than Diego Columbus, Christopher Columbus's son. A group of enslaved Wolof people, who were Muslim, rose up against their captors. Armed with machetes and other tools, they fought for their freedom. Though the rebellion was eventually crushed by colonial militia, many of the insurgents escaped into the island's interior, where they joined or formed their own Maroon communities. This uprising terrified the Spanish colonial world. It was a stunning confirmation for slaveholders that the people they enslaved would not just obey. Within weeks, the colonial government passed the first laws specifically designed to control the enslaved population, a desperate attempt to prevent another revolt. This 1521 revolt, with figures like Maria Olofa remembered in oral tradition as a leader, showed that from the very beginning, organized armed rebellion was a key part of the fight for freedom. It set a powerful example that would echo for centuries to come. The War for Freedom, the Haitian Revolution. Of all the acts of resistance, one stands above the rest as the most successful slave rebellion in human history, the Haitian Revolution. It wasn't just a revolt, it was a full-blown war of liberation that lasted from 1791 to 1804. It was the climax of every form of resistance that had come before it: organized rebellion, Maroon warfare, and an unbreakable will to be free. The revolution began with a coordinated uprising in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, the most profitable slave colony in the world. Tens of thousands of enslaved people rose up, burning plantations and fighting for their liberty. Led by brilliant military and political leaders like Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, the formerly enslaved army defeated the French, Spanish, and British empires. In 1804, they declared their independence and created the nation of Haiti, the world's first black republic and the first independent nation founded by former slaves. The Haitian Revolution was a beacon of hope for enslaved people everywhere and a symbol of absolute terror for slaveholders. It proved that a society built on slavery was not invincible and that a determined people fighting for their own freedom could bring empires to their knees. The Quiet War, everyday resistance. While big rebellions wrote headlines in blood and fire, the war against slavery was also fought daily, on an individual level. These were the quiet acts of resistance, the everyday defiance that chipped away at the foundation of the entire system. This was a war of persistence, fought by millions who might never have picked up a weapon but refused to let their spirits be broken. This resistance took countless forms. People would deliberately slow down their work, a subtle but effective way to hurt the plantation's profits. They'd pretend to be sick to get a moment's rest or break tools and sabotage equipment to grind operations to a halt. Taking food or supplies wasn't just about survival, it was about reclaiming a tiny piece of the wealth their labor created. But maybe the most profound form of everyday resistance was cultural. Against all odds, they held on to their African traditions, languages, music, and stories. They sang spirituals with hidden messages of freedom and escape, and secretly learned to read and write, knowing that literacy was a powerful tool for empowerment. These daily acts weren't passive. They were calculated risks, powerful assertions of their humanity in a system designed to strip it away. From the fortified villages of West Africa to the swamps of North Carolina and the battlefields of Haiti, the story of the transatlantic slave trade is completely tied to the story of resistance. It wasn't rare or isolated. It was constant, everywhere, and incredibly varied. Enslaved people were not just victims. They were rebels, strategists, survivors, and freedom fighters. They fought back with weapons when they could, with their wits when they couldn't, and always with their unbreakable spirit. By remembering these untold stories, We do more than just fix the history books. We honor the immense courage of those who fought and died for freedom, and we recognize that their struggle is a vital part of the ongoing fight for justice and equality today. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, the human need for liberty can never be extinguished. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the past. If these stories moved you, please share this video to help make sure these heroes are never forgotten. Subscribe for more deep dives into hidden history, and let us know in the comments which story of resistance hit you the hardest. Until next time, keep seeking the truth.